It's me again, Mrs. Finner, and this video I'm going to break down the constructed response of how do characters influence plot. So again, this was a tricky one. It was a bit different than the previous constructed response, which was the compare and contrast constructed response. So I'm going to break this down for you. So let's jump into it. So to start, I want to look at the rubric. Here's the rubric. Again, when I was a student and even as a teacher, I constantly refer back to these rubrics because this is how you're going to be graded, right? I don't just come up with a random number for how I think you're doing. It is very intentional and purposeful based on the criteria that I'm giving you. And if you are just very intentional yourself, meaning you take your time, you look at how you will be graded, you're going to do well, right? It's not a surprise. It's not a gotcha thing. Like I give you, here's what you can do to get the best grade possible. So all you have to do is follow that roadmap. So let's check out our roadmap, okay? So the description it's kind of a long description, so that's why you have to click into it. But the first piece that I'm going to assess you on is that you can introduce your claim, and all your claim is just what you think. That's it. It's just your response to the prompt. So do you introduce that claim with a genre, title, and author? We call it title, author, genre statement or a tag statement. You must include this for this prompt. You should also include this in your Socratic seminar prompt, and in pretty much every prompt moving forward, you need to use title, author, genre. It's super important. It's going to make you a great writer, and it's going to make it really clear to your audience, whether it's me or a student or whomever. It's going to make this really clear. So let's check out the next. After you have your tag, your title, author, genre statement, you have a claim and you answer your question in a complete sentence. So your tag statement, and I think this is where some students get confused, your tag statement is just one half of that introductory sentence. So the one in this particular example, you could copy, right? We gave it to you. I'm like, here you go. It's a gift. Here's your tag statement. You literally just had to copy it. It was your introduction, right? And then the second half of that introduction sentence was what you think. So you take boop, your tag statement, boop, your thought, smash it into one introductory sentence, and you have it. So if you did that, you're going to get full credit. It shouldn't be separate. I hope that's making sense. The next, you give one reason to support your claim. This is at least one sentence and makes sense with the plot of the story. Yes, so you need to have evidence to support what you're thinking. You're going to give me that reason, that piece of, not that piece of textual evidence, but in your mind, you're going to say with your own words, why do you think that, right? Give me some thoughts. Make it a complete sentence. Capital letter, punctuation at the end, capitalizing proper nouns, people's names, right? Okay. You give a second reason to support your claim. So some of you lost points because you gave me one reason, and clearly in the rubric it says that you need two reasons, right? As you get older, you might be asked to give three or more, right, pieces of evidence to support your thinking. Remember what I've always said, the most beautiful thing about English is that you can say whatever you want. You just need evidence to back up your thinking, right? As long as you have sound evidence, you're golden, right? You need a piece of correctly copied and quoted text evidence. Some students still put their own words in quotes. No, we quote someone's thinking or someone's ideas that are not our own. That way it's not plagiarized, right? If you don't put someone else's work in quotes and give them credit for their thoughts, for their ideas, then you're copying, right? So you don't need to do it with your own, because those are your thoughts and you're writing this. So I know as your teacher and a reader would know, hey, for example, this is Addison's work. She's giving me permission to use it. Thank you, Addison. Addie, thank you. This is Addie's work, right? So she doesn't need to put quotes around it because I already know as a reader because it's coming from her. She's the author, right? But when she's quoting Patrick Ness, the author of Monster Calls, that's when she needs to put quotes around it because that's not her thinking, right? So please make sure that since it's not your work, that you copy it correctly. And it's kind of a little trickier in this book because sometimes there is italicized phrasing, right, where the wording is slanted, right? So just make sure that you copy it correctly, that you're looking at commas. Again, English seems super easy, but it's very detail-oriented, right? Next, cite evidence correctly. Again, you know how to do this. We'll go over it here, but just make sure you keep doing that. You explain how your evidence supports your reasoning. And again, be careful. Remember, this kind of harkens back or goes back to the previous video. Don't use first and second pronouns. Don't say I, me, don't say you, right? So you want to be careful of that. But you should explain how that evidence supports it. So if you mention something in your evidence, like if there's a key word, like say that key word or mention it, right? It should make sense. It should be relevant, meaning whatever you explain, it should make sense what you're explaining. You have a conclusion sentence. Again, we've previously talked about that. It should mirror or be a cousin or a copy of, just basically a rewording of your introductory sentence. Again, not using you, I, me, my. And please, so many students miss this point, and it's so crucial. And I would argue that this point maybe is most important, because if you spell check, proofread, maybe even just read it out loud once, you're going to fix so many of these previous mistakes if you just take your time. So let's check out what this student wrote. In the magical realism novel, A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Wow, beautiful. If I was making a little spaghetti dish, this would be like, I'd be like Salt Bae, the meme, right? This is like the little cherry on top. So she has the genre. It's magical realism. Beautiful. She italicized and underlined. You don't need to do both. With books, with novels, you either italicize or underline. That's pretty nitpicky, so I'm going to leave that alone. You do not put a book in quotes, okay? You only put a short story in quotes or the chapter of a book. So that's fine though. By Patrick Ness. Beautiful. She capitalized the author's first name, the author's last name. That part of the introduction's done. Now she needs to, if we go back to the rubric, what she needed to do was complete the question by writing her response. So, in the magical realism novel, A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, the monster that Connor portrays as a separate being is actually just Connor releasing his pain, anger, and grief. Wonderful, beautiful, right? So, her prompt was, I don't know if it's here, but it's basically asking, do you think Connor and the monster are one, or are they a different, separate, are they two separate beings? So she's saying he's portrayed, or they are separate, but actually they're the same, right? So now let's look at her reasoning. When Connor got into the fight with Harry, great, she capitalized someone's first name. Connor thought he just stood there watching the monster beat up Harry. In reality, it was Connor beating up Harry. In the text, it states, wonderful. So she gives her reason in a complete sentence. Beautiful. Then she sets up her evidence by saying, in the text it states, or the author said, or the text states. Beautiful. Notice she has quotes around this, right? She has a pretty big piece of evidence. You don't necessarily need this big of a piece. I would say if you have a 2 to 3 sentence piece of evidence, beautiful. That's fine. That's perfect. So you have the author, last name, page number, and parenthesis, period. Again, very nitpicky of me, but you don't need a period after your evidence, like at the end of a sentence. You need it after the parenthesis, but that's fine. Then she explains her evidence. So that's the biggest thing. Some of you left off this particular writing with no conclusion. You just ended it with your evidence. And as a reader, I'm like, right? I want you to explain your reasoning, explain your evidence. So that's what she did. She said, this evidence shows that even though Connor thinks the monster is doing all the damage, it's actually Connor. Connor uses the monster to portray his anger. When Connor thought the monster destroyed the sitting room, it was actually Connor because he said that his hands hurt after. And then this is her beautiful conclusion sentence. Because of these details, the monster is actually Connor and they aren't two separate beings. Beautiful. It beautifully rewords what her introduction was. This student got full credit, right? She got an A+ on this classwork assignment. Very, very well done. So again, you can see that it meets all of these criteria. I told her great job. So if you just meet these requirements, it's going to be great. So I hope that this was helpful to see an actual student example of someone your age who did this, and just to kind of see visually, because I'm a visual learner as well, what this looks like. And I love seeing examples. So if you are editing, I hope this is helpful, and I will see you guys in my next video with the Socratic Seminar Prep. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.